Hey everyone, Sleepy Reader here. This video is going to be a little bit of a haul video and a little bit of comic book thoughts on the 8 comic books I picked up this Wednesday. I managed to read them all already, and I thought I'd just tell you my thoughts on them. And in imitation of the way Ghost Critic used to do it, I'm going to do it as a countdown from my least favorite to my most favorite. There were 8 of them, and seven of them were actually extreme. I enjoyed them all, although nothing sort of popped out as the most brilliant comic I'd ever read or anything like that. So it was a good week, not a great week, perhaps. But for the heck of it, I kind of ordered them anyway. The one that I did not like that much was Wonder Twins, and I'm sad about that. Maybe it's because it's aimed at younger kids, but the jokes fell very flat to me. The vampire named Druncula just did not seem funny to me. The whole joke about Druncula being that he's trying to stay sober, but he keeps drinking people with alcohol in their blood. It was done in such a way that was just kind of sad. And a big theme of this comic was the American prison system and the sad aspects of that, in terms of private prisons and how many people are incarcerated and all of that. Apparently 2.5 million, which I did not, in the United States. I did not realize the figure was that high. So I guess I learned something here. I just don't get into the art very much. It's colored by the artist, but for me, the colors really bring the comic down visually. And and yeah, like I say, if it's for kids, like I don't really want to read this to my daughter. I feel like it's too much of a downer. It's supposed to be fun and light and goofy humor, but it's all kind of sad and depressing. And as much as I agree that we need all kinds of changes to the way we incarcerate people, and especially the for-profit prisons and that kind of thing, and perhaps the way we do sentencing too, for various crimes, it's not a good fit in this comic, and the whole comic in general belly flopped a bit for me. I did manage to read it to the end, and I think I'm going to get one more issue just in hopes of Mark Russell warming up to his subject or sucking me in somehow. A much more fun comic was As Guardians of the Galaxy. I just ignore this War of Realms ad at the top of it, but still written by Colin Bunn. I think it's a different penciler, and maybe that's where the problem was, or I don't know where, but it was a big action issue where different groups of people are fighting each other, and the planet, Ego, the living planet, is attacking them at the same time because they're on Ego, and Ego's being controlled by some other evil people. So there's a lot of shenanigans going back and forth and different things, and it just got a bit muddled. So it was fun to read, but I felt a little, whoa, okay, what, who, what, where, how? So other than that, a fun comic, and I love the coloring on this one, actually, and I like the coloring so much that I also download it digitally with the free code that comes with it, and it looks great on the page, and then it looks even better on my device, on my tablet. So very interesting color. I think it's had the same colorist all along. The colorist's name is Federico Blee. It's very garish and bright, but it's also rich and has all kinds of things going on within the coloring that kind of delight me. Supergirl was fun and intense. My big complaint here, maybe connecting up to the Wonder Twins, is I can't really read this with my daughter. It's the way it's drawn is a bit too horrific for her. There's too much gore. And I wonder, what's the purpose of goriness in a mainstream DC comic, especially one like Supergirl or Superman? There's violence aplenty, but does it have to be so hideous? couldn't they keep their audience without the hideousness and be additive, like dads reading it with their daughters? So, yeah, well, I enjoyed this, and they actually promised some answers in the next issue. It says, next, Killers of Krypton finally revealed. Now, will they really do that in Supergirl and not in the Superman comic? That's interesting. And I'm still not... I mean, I go with it and have fun with these adventures of Supergirl in space, but it was more fun reading it with my daughter. And I'm a little sad about this undoing of the basic mythos of Krypton, that it was destroyed by a natural disaster, that the supposed advanced race on Krypton couldn't accept that their own planet was falling apart and did nothing about it. So to make it more, some evil council caused Krypton to be destroyed. I'm sure that'll be undone someday, or maybe it will be undone within the larger Brian Michael Bendis plotline. It just doesn't seem fitting. Assassination Nation was a lot of fun, and also one my daughter would have liked to have read because of the Erica Henderson artwork. But along with some questionable language, like a character named Fuck Tarkington, which I would have been willing to read that with my daughter, and I would have just said expletive deleted, and she would have known what I was saying. But it's not good for her, it seems, to have her dad saying all that stuff out loud all the time. But along with that, it was just violent enough. We could have dealt with assassins killing each other, but... when you see brain matter spattering, that's beyond what my daughter wants to see. You can still give her nightmares at age 10. And maybe there's other kids who are tough enough for that. But who knows what's coming in later issues. I thought the script was very funny. It's extremely light stuff by Kyle Starks. Kyle Starks. First time I've read Kyle Starks. And I would have ranked it a bit higher if I wasn't boldly about half of the characters get killed in this very first issue. But I couldn't quite keep track of who all the characters were who were dead or not dead, even though at the beginning is this chart showing all the assassins involved. And the basic plot is someone who's the head of a mob knows someone's out to kill him, and he's decided to hire every well-known assassin, the top 20 on the charts of assassins, to protect him. And there's all kinds of complicated different characters of all of them. But the way Erica Henderson drew them, some of them really stood out, but some were hard to parse out who they were, especially if they appeared once, talked, and then got shot later or got their neck broken. It's ironic that they have this chart to help you, and it still didn't help me as much as I would have liked. Another light, fun romp, even though it's end-of-the-world stuff, is Hawkman. Very much has that Saturday matinee or widescreen popcorn movie feel to it. But it's quite satisfying, wonderful art and color, and the script by Vendetti didn't surprise me, but it still pleased me. So the sort of resolution that we seem to be heading into, or the way we solve the problem of the seeming end of the world, and we don't call in the Justice League. Why he doesn't call in the Justice League, I don't know, but that doesn't matter for this kind of story. If I have any complaint, it's just that I'm a bit tired of cosmic level stories, and I might have enjoyed it if this whole mystery that Hawkman has been on for the entire 10 issues, if it had turned out to be something a little more small scale but personal, that would have been cool. But it is what it is, and I'm definitely enjoying it. So I should have been giving them numbers. Let's see. So number 10 on my list was Wonder Twins. Number 9 was, not number 10, number 8. Number 7 was As Guardians of the Galaxy. Number 6 was Supergirl. Number 5 was Assassination Nation. Number 4 was Hawkman. And coming in at number 3 is Little Bird. And I was super excited about this because it's another comic drawn by Ian Bertram, who did that Dark Horse comic with Peter Tomasi about the Winchester House. Can't remember its title right now. And his artwork has improved even more here. So it's a delight. Has really spot on, perfect coloring by Matt Hollingsworth, who's a colorist. I should look for things colored by Matt Hollingsworth, I realize. The color here is its own feat of art, you might say. It serves the art very well, but it also delights all on its own, I'd say, just because of the choice of colors and their uses. So good for me, textbook case of coloring gone right. So this should have been number 1, but the basic story feels kind of familiar. It's in the future. There's an evil empire run by someone who's basically like a pope, and the last remaining good guys are Native Americans from Canada, but it looks like maybe there's other Canadians. Maybe all Canadians are the good guys, and despite it being a Catholic empire, it's kind of like the United States versus what remains of Canada. I don't know. But so it's a little... it feels a little familiar. It has kind of that European look, and maybe because it's more European looking, it's okay that it's somewhat confusing. That the characters are a little bit of a cipher at times, or just kind of, here's the evil emperor role, and here's the innocent who must stand up by herself, and here's the jaded battle veteran who doesn't want to fight anymore, but will somehow be drawn back into this struggle that he doesn't think anyone can win. Yeah, but on the other hand, here's this mind-blowing art. They say in the back that it's not going to come out in trades anytime soon, that this will be the only way you can get it for quite a while. It's a lot of pages. It's on very good paper stock, so it's definitely worth getting in the individual issues. I'm a bit cynical, like how long will they really wait to release it in trade? And it seems like something that should be in a deluxe hardcover, if nothing else. But anyway, a really good book, just drawn down a little bit by that overly familiar plot structure. And I wonder, is it going to say something about the destruction of Native American culture by the overrunning European cultures that came after the Native Americans to this continent and just kind of trampled right over them? I don't know. Number 2 was Oblivion Song. So in a week, if there were more like super strong comics, I don't think Oblivion Song would be number 2, but it's very solid. And with this issue, number 13, we jump ahead 3 years, and sometimes I hate that. And at first I thought I was going to hate it, but it makes a lot of sense and it really works. Our hero is just getting out of jail, and he's a bit of a changed person, I think. We'll see how that plays out. And now the society has found uses for its ability to visit Oblivion in sort of mind biological materials. So, just like when we find new plants and organisms hidden out in the jungle that turn out to help us make medicines, they're doing the same thing with Oblivion. So that's really cool. And as always, as I've said many times before, I love the coloring by, they don't list her on the cover, but by Annalisa Leone is what really makes the art here for me. The storytelling of the art is really good, but I don't love the artist's style. I don't like the way he draws faces or anything, but he's a fine storyteller. And then the rock star coloring goes over that. Like just that one panel there, it looks really good on the page, on paper. I have no desire I never say to myself, hey, I wonder what that looks like digitally, because it looks so good on the page. I don't even think about what the digital might look like. Although now that I've said it, I might want to go look. And it's on very nice paper too. So that's to be said for it. So the one thing about this issue is there's a couple of characters that they make a big deal, like a big reveal of this character Marco, but I don't remember Marco. And maybe is that a flaw with the artwork or the writing or a little of both? That characters haven't stood out to me too much. Their faces all have the same kind of sketchy look, often have similar expressions on their faces. But also maybe the writer hasn't tagged them enough and been too subtle in their characterization, in a sense, for a monthly comic. And then there's another character in the Oblivion world named Dane, and I can't seem to recall who Dane is. Maybe if I was reading this in trades and big chunks, none of this would be a problem for me. And it didn't hurt my enjoyment too much of what was going on, except that I felt like it was supposed to be very significant to me who they were. My number one book, kind of surprising, because I feel like usually my top books are indie books, is Justice League Dark, written by James Tynion, drawn by a changing array or rotating array of artists, all of whom do an amazing job. This issue, it's the pencilers are Alvaro Martinez Bueno and Miguel Mendoza or Mendoza. I don't know how to pronounce their names, so apologies on that. But all kinds of clever layouts from this very first page where the panels are inside the helmet of Dr. Fate. So the layouts are always very creative and yet at the same time never confusing. I'm never confused. James Tynion has a huge cast of characters, but I know who everyone is and I have a good sense of each of them as characters. This is another giant, epic, cosmic story. So part of me would like, as I said before, more small stories. But if you have to have a giant, epic, cosmic story, what James Tynion is doing here is the way to do it. This is truly an enjoyable epic. We'll have to see how it all wraps up in the end. It was almost wrapped up before, and then he just expanded the crisis. I don't know completely how I feel about having Dr. Fate and the Lords of Order be so evil. I think maybe they've been kind of evil in the past also at times. I seem to remember that in a J.M. DeMatteis miniseries. But can we ever trust Dr. Fate to be a hero again? I don't know. But it's for a monthly comic book, it's a lush read. You get a lot out of every issue. So for anyone who likes supernatural epics, if there is such a fan of that kind of thing, this is awesome. Not even something I was particularly looking for, except that I like the idea of the supernatural characters, which is what brought me on board in the first place. And James Tynion's really selling me on what he's doing here. So those were my books of the week. Now let me show you some stuff that I've picked up in the past few weeks that is... Well, at first I'm going to show you some pulp paperbacks and the like, and they have a little bit of a connection to comics, I suppose, but not a big one. And then some more comic book related things coming up. There's a newish used bookstore near my house. The bookstore's new, the books are old. And run by a really nice woman. I always enjoy just going in there and chatting with her when I do pick up books. Makes me wish I had time to buy even more. But anyway, I found this biography called Tarzan Forever of Edgar Rice Burroughs, the creator of Tarzan, and of John Carter of Mars and Carson of Venus and all of those guys. I found this there for a fairly reasonable price for a hardback. And I read a biography of Burroughs. It was more a biography of his books, I think, as a kid. So I was kind of excited. This is from 1999 to find that someone else was interested in writing about his life. And I've read the first few chapters. They kind of jump around in his life, so I've learned some stuff about later in his life, and I'm starting to read about his childhood, and I'm enjoying it a lot. By modern standards in particular, he's a very flawed man because he was very into his Anglo-Saxon heritage and valued that very highly. But nevertheless, I think a very interesting literary figure, so to speak. And never got as rich, and was pretty famous, but never got as rich as you would think for one of the best-selling authors of the 20th century. And on that vein, at the same bookstore, I picked up 2 Edgar Rice Burroughs books, which I have read before as a kid. I read them. I read the Mars series. Was my favorite series as a kid, and so I reread every book in the Mars series many times back then. I've only reread John Carter of Mars as an adult, and parts of it are surprisingly well written, and other parts of it are pretty bad. So it's an interesting mix. But anyway, this is book number 4, Thuva Maid of Mars, and I've never seen, even though I've seen many editions, these are earlier than my time, I guess. And I never saw these covers by this particular artist, whoever it is. It doesn't say. There's a signature that I can't read. The style reminds me a bit of Gray Morrow's sci-fi painting, but I don't think it is Gray Morrow. And on the back, they show other covers. The thing about this one looks like it's never been read. One of the painful things about these old books I found with one of those Conan books I got is if you start reading it, it starts falling apart because it was very cheaply glued together. And this other one is book 6 in the series. I think there was 11 books in the series. This one's called The Mastermind of Mars. I like this cover. I like both these covers a lot. It's hard to say which I like. It's obviously the same artist, although I don't see a signature. I'm pretty sure it's the same artist. I love this kind of, I think it was a popular art style in commercial art, perhaps in the 60s or 50s, where you can really see the paint. There's a stiffness to it, but still you can see the looseness of the paint strokes themselves are cool. An interesting back cover also. So I was very happy to find those. And then another thing I was very happy to find, although these have definitely been read, are 2 of the 3 books of Skyath by Lee Brackett, which picks back up with her character Eric John Stark, who is one of her reoccurring characters when she wrote for pulp magazines in the 40s and perhaps early 50s, before she moved to Hollywood and became a very successful screenwriter. She actually co-wrote a lot of screenplays with William Faulkner, including some adaptations of Ernest Hemingway books. I think she was in on the To Have and Have Not, but it might have been something else. And then the last script she ever wrote was The Empire Strikes Back, with her co-writer Lawrence Kasdan, who seems to usually get the credit for it, but I always wonder if that movie being so good has to do with having this great old pulp writer on it. And so I think in the 70s she came back to writing prose with this 3-book series that picked up her hero, who was kind of, and it had Jim Steranko covers, which is the big comic book connection here. Steranko, I don't think had a very brief period where he did fantasy covers. I think there's a Michael Moorcock book or 2 featuring paintings by him. Frankly, I mean, I enjoy his paintings, but his graphic art is probably his greatest strength. But these definitely look like Steranko paintings, you can tell that. Oh, and this one wraps around. But so this character, John Eric Stark, was kind of like Tarzan, raised by savages on a primitive planet, and then later discovering civilization and becoming kind of a cross between Conan and James Bond, going undercover on different planets. And in this book, these 3 books, Undercover on this planet, Scath. And I remember loving reading these books, but I don't really remember much about the planet Scath anymore. So I look forward to rereading these. Hopefully they won't totally fall apart when I do that. And purely for the cover, because I think I've read this book before, is Fred Saberhagen's Brother Assassin, one of his Berserker books. But this is so totally a 60s cover. Maybe I'll turn out to be wrong and it was the early 70s, but 1969. And the book was originally written in 67. So I don't think they've done covers like this before or since the 60s/early 70s period. And I love this cover. I don't know if I read this A. van Vogt book when I was a kid. A. van Vogt. I never know how to pronounce his name. But I couldn't resist that cover. Often they would reprint books under different titles and stuff, so I don't recall a title called The Quest for the Future. It says it's a kaleidoscope of brilliant ideas, new conceptions, and fast-paced adventure. It's sure to be ranked alongside Van Vogt's major works such as World of Null-A, The Weapon Makers, and Slan. So he was famous for incredibly fast-paced and sometimes semi-coherent plots, where everything was like a new idea was supposed to be introduced every 750 words, which would be about like every 3 pages, I think. Okay, so that's that for those pulpy books I picked up. And while we're on the pulp side, there is Frank Miller's Xerxes. I should just dive in and read this after this video, if I have time. When I saw, I don't think I had planned to buy this. When I saw it at my comic book shop, I couldn't resist. I just love the big, colorful pages. Frank Miller's artwork is not very detailed anymore, but I feel like the color kind of makes up for it, and the composition is still very interesting. Whether the story will be much Frank Miller's best days feel kind of behind him, but we'll see. A very nice quality hardback. And then a few weeks ago, After Comics had a video where he talked about comic book calendars, and I felt a welling of nostalgia, so I went on eBay and bought 2 calendars that I remember having as a kid. The Mighty Marvel calendar for 1977. So what I did as a kid, unfortunately, was after each month passed, I ripped the page out of the calendar and used it as a poster in my room. So by the end of the year, I guess I had all 12 pictures scattered about my room. I think the only other poster I had at the time, comic book related, was the Foom poster by Jim Steranko, which of course I don't have that these days either. And I seem to remember I had a Star Wars poster, but probably not in 1975. I think did Star Wars come in 76 or 77, I think. Yeah. Love that Barry Smith picture. So anyway, you get the idea. It brings back a lot of nostalgia for me, this thing that was hanging on my wall when I was a kid. And then there is, the Marvel Memory Album calendar from 1977. Very similar design, layout. I think, judging from AFTA's video in other years, they changed it and they used covers and different design approaches. But I like this. You are getting pinups basically. But I think pinups drawn for, most of them for this calendar rather than reprints. I'm not sure. So then, I guess this is also nostalgia, but it covers more an era long before I was born. I picked up Volume 2 of the Complete Terry and the Pirates by Milton Caniff, or Milton Caniff, as I always called him as a kid. When I was a kid, there was a Steve Canyon, a strip by him in the newspaper, which did not interest me at all. And then Later, I discovered a few reprints of Terry and the Pirates, and that was really cool. I don't know if now, as an adult, I would like Steve Canyon. I'm not even sure what Steve Canyon's about. Terry and the Pirates was about some American adventurers in the Asian Pacific area. And anyway, I look forward to really diving into this. It's boomeranging back onto blaming Earl Grey, who did a video on these because I had commented on one point when he was showing Hugo Pratt artwork that it looked an awful lot like Milton Caniff's Terry and the Pirates. So he went out and bought a whole bunch of volumes of Terry and the Pirates. I think he was happy with the purchase. And watching him do it made me aware of these volumes. So I purchased one of them. You can't get volume 1. It's out of print. I mean, you can get it if you want to spend a lot of money. I'll decide later on if I want to spend the money for volume 1. Earl also said the printing was less good on volume 1. So, and then hopefully I'll get around to reading this soon. But then in my ridiculousness, out of the library, I got volume 3 and volume 4. It just goes on. And volume 5. I think there's 6 volumes total. So I figure I'll read the volume I actually paid for, but also look through these ones from the library and see if I want to buy more of it. I think 2 through 6 are all still available, are in print, so are easily available. And then the first one, for whatever reason, is out of print. If it was poorly printed, maybe they're thinking of printing a new version. And while I was at it at the library, more stuff that I don't really have time to read. Dashiell Hammett and Alex Raymond's Secret Agent X9, which dates back to 1934, which I think is the year Terry and the Pirates started also. So it's kind of a golden age of action and adventure newspaper strips in the United States. These seem less exciting than his Flash Gordon work. And from what they wrote in the introduction, it seems like sometimes Dashiell Hammett was doing more of the writing and sometimes less. And eventually Dashiell Hammett left the series, and eventually Alex Raymond did, but it kept going and eventually became like Jim Corrigan secret agent or something like that, which I do vaguely remember seeing on newspaper comic strip pages when I was a kid. So it lasted at least through the late 60s, I'm guessing, but with different artists and writers. The amazing thing, which they mention here, at the same time that Alex Raymond was doing this, he was also doing the Flash Gordon huge Sunday page, and another strip, which isn't talked about very much, called Jungle Jim, I assume an imitation of Tarzan, that he was also doing. So he's doing 3 comic strips at the same time, which is kind of mind-blowing. Yeah, so I think that does it for me now. I'll have more stuff to talk about and show you in, I don't know, a few days or next week. Hope you're all doing well, and thanks for sticking with me for 34 minutes.